Right, here's to one of our other top stories now. The third witness in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial has taken the stand. Nthabiseng Mokete was the Khumalos' neighbour when they lived at their Vosloorus home where the soccer star was shot dead in October of 2014. Let's go to eNCA's Manqoba Mchunu, who's following proceedings. He joins us now live for the latest. Manqoba, let's first start with the second witness who took the stand, and that is also a former member, or rather neighbour of the Khumalos. He was talking about exactly what he saw happened. His testimony started yesterday. How did it conclude?
Well, Masiko, cross-examination beginning today for Khayanqatje, who was one of the neighbours that saw what happened on the night that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. You recall that yesterday he detailed hearing a commotion and a banging of the door that had happened outside the Khumalo house, and that's when he had then gone to inspect to see what was happening at that particular moment. He saw somebody jumping over the fence, and he says that his father had told him not to go over the fence or to jump over the fence because he had heard something that sounded like gunshots. But one of the interesting points that he had raised is the fact that when they got outside the house, they saw other community members that had told them that there were people, in fact, that had ran in the direction of the park, and he says they then went to see if those people were there, and they came back without seeing anybody. They found nobody when they went to search for those particular individuals. And I think this is one of the issues that was raised by the defense as to how long exactly was it that they'd gone to look for these particular individuals, and at the time when they got back to the house, how was Senzo Meyiwa, what state was he in? But interestingly, the state also asserting that Meyiwa was left in that particular house at the time without being attended. He was not given any attention before he was taken to hospital. And I think it was very interesting when we heard just the time that it took for Khayanqatje to go to the park and to come back to the house. It was around 12 minutes that they took to go to the park. And when they returned to the house, he says he found Senzo Meyiwa lying down next to the kitchen. At the time, he was unattended. They then tried to pick him up. And the assertion, certainly from the defense, is that he was left there simply to die. But I think we heard the judge interjecting as far as that line of questioning is concerned. But perhaps let's take a listen, Masiko, to what Advocate Mshololo had put to Khayanqatje as far as this is concerned.
By the time you arrived, you said you remember only that there was Khumalos' mother who was inside the lounge. As he was sitting in that critical condition, is there any Khumalo family member who was helping him, or he was left there to die by himself?
You can't say that. Left there to die.
Or he was left?
This lady, Zandile said, I went to Mapiri. Please.
Can I rephrase that question?
No, let's not adulterate the evidence by stating non-essentials which were never ever testified to. She said she panicked, she froze, she came out, she went to Mapiri, she was spending with Nthabiseng, she couldn't even dial 10-111, and now you're telling us she was left there to die.
Manuel, can I rephrase my question?
Yes.
Is there any person who was assisting or who was with the deceased at the time when you found him, or he was left there by his own?
Manimthola laphayana ngabe kukhona yini umuntu obezama ukumlekelela okanye ube lapho nje eyedwa lapho?
Yeah, masivela ngepassage bekangekho umuntu engimbonile mina.
Thank you.
When we appeared at the passage, there isn't any person that I had witnessed there.
Thank you, my lord. No further questions.
All right, Manqoba, of course, another witness took the stand today, Nthabiseng Mokete. She says she lived directly opposite the Khumalo house. What has she described in her testimony?
Well, Masiko, she described the moments that she saw the pandemonium that broke at the Khumalo house. So the moments after Senzo Meyiwa had been shot, and at the time she says that she was sitting in a vehicle with a friend of hers when they heard what sounded like a gunshot going off, and as they were still trying to make sense of what was happening, she then saw somebody running coming from the direction of the Khumalo home. She says this person was lean in build and he was short, he was wearing baggy pants, and this is an individual that came running. He headed towards the direction of the park, and she says as they were still trying to make sense of it all, there was then another gunshot that went inside the house, and this is when they then saw two other men running outside from the house. As she says, they also made their way towards the direction of the park. But she also detailed, Masiko, the final moments of Senzo Meyiwa. She says just after they'd heard a third shot, that's when they saw Zandi Khumalo coming, screaming and calling on her to call the police. And she says it was during those moments then she went into the house. They then spoke to her sister, Maggie Piri. At the time, she was also frantic. And this is when then Zandi Khumalo then made it back to the house. And this is when they then went to the house to see what was happening. They had then found Senzo Meyiwa already loaded inside the car on his way to hospital, and they followed to the hospital. She also gave a description, Masiko, of the final moments of Senzo Meyiwa. When she got to hospital, she was one of the people that was called by a nurse into the ward, and this is where she saw Senzo Meyiwa being resuscitated, and just a few minutes later the doctors saying that they'd done everything they could, and they then pronounced that Senzo Meyiwa had died at that particular point. And so she relates that story of how she had then waited inside that ward until the mother of Kelly Khumalo, Gladness Khumalo, had arrived in that ward, and what subsequently happened after that. But perhaps let's take a listen to how she described what she saw when she was sitting inside that car and what followed after that.
Antere nganyisana hape mo hole engwe hape.
As we were busy arguing with each other like that, then there was another sound of a firearm that is being discharged. Mas longo siphikisana kanjalo kwaba nomnye umsindo wokuthuma kwesibhamu.
Haila jwale tse ya bobedi ila haufi le koloi.
Now, this second sound of a firearm that is being discharged, it sounded as though it was now close to the vehicle. The sound was closer to the vehicle. Lo msindo-ke wokuthuma kwesibhamu lo wesibili ubusu ukhalela la eduze nemoto.
So we proceed.
Ha se qeta ho lla fela ho fete bo batho ba ithuba matha ba ya ko tlase same direction ela o wa uqala amathetseng ko yona.
Now, after that sound, two people passed running towards the park as well, in the same direction that the first person who passed running took.
All right, Manqoba Mchunu live for us there in the High Court in Pretoria. Let's leave it there for now.